Radio Okitalk, Radio Okitalk, von Mensch zu Mensch. Let's go.
Welcome to Team Rabbit Hole edition 135 with Simon Gerve. We see you too. Join the team as we go down the rabbit hole with Simon, a channeler of an ET civilization in our galactic family, actually descending from both present and future humans, called the Yael. Well met. Welcome.
Hello, I greet everybody. A warm welcome to this amazing show, this amazing opportunity for me to talk, for me to learn more about myself, to connect in this matter with the world, with every listener, and to go deeper in the idea of ET presence here on planet Earth and how we can intensify it, how we can make it available for us, and how it could look like in the future to create actual physical contact. So thank you for having me.
Most definitely, Simon. So it's funny. First of all, that was a slick track. I like that intro a lot, Raphael. It's a good choice.
Selection, yes.
Oh, that was sexy. But the alien is the card. It's the hermit card. It would be this episode. I take the numerological resonator of the number 135, so that's 9, and 9 is the hermit card. But in this Starman tarot deck that I use by David
Jim,
DeAngelis,
maybe turn your mic a bit. You're kind of muffled.
Okay, got it. Yeah, David DeAngelis' Starman tarot deck. It says the alien, which is highly synchronistic already. I bring back knowledge from distant places. The alien, or traditionally it's the hermit card, but in this deck is the alien, says, know your worth. You are perfect the way you are. Be free. Seek answers within you. Go deeper and understand more of the universe, and take the time to do something you've never done before. Raphael, what would the Galactic Heritage card be?
Well, you guys are not going to believe this. So technically, of course, the Yael, as it said in the intro, are very much related to the humans. The Galactic Heritage cards, Enlistor Royal and Prism of Lyra, or Lyra, however it's properly pronounced, talk about many different species. And in the Galactic Tarot deck, usually species have about 12 cards, some have a bit less, and there are a few special cards. 27 is one of these special cards, whereas there's only one with that associated to that particular, let's say, aspect or civilization. In this case, we have one of my favorite numbers, 27. Non-humanoid alienness, parallel timeline. The energy of this card refers to the sense of alienness that many humans have that keeps them from feeling connected to life on planet Earth. Many feel strange in their own skin, as if they came from somewhere else. You may indeed have a connection to non-human beings in the universe, but because you're human in this life, this card asks you to begin embracing your uniqueness and celebrate it rather than fear it or be ashamed of it. If you need help, ask some loving non-human being to assist you during meditation. Feel their alienness and open your heart to them anyway. You and they are one.
Huzzah. So, Simon, out of curiosity, what, if anything, obviously, besides the fact that there are alien resonances, hit you about those cards?
Well, about everything, it's not, we always say, I would call it in the community, there's no coincidences. So everything happens for a reason, and it fits pretty good to dive deeper, to get more understanding, and that the cards are reflecting that. And because that's what Raphael said in the beginning too, that the We See You Too, it's an actual event that we have planned for about 2-3 months, and it's now official since about 1 month. And we're going to host a CE5 meditation event combined with channeling of the Yael civilization, with the intention to also create physical contact with them, hopefully. But it can also, of course, come through other senses. And however they want to play with us, they are welcome to do that, since there are many, many possibilities to create contact. And so this event is going to take place in Germany, in Elmstein, and it's a rather small place in the southwest. Southwest. That's correct, of Germany. And we already put together a homepage. So in case you get lost already in the beginning, if that might be the case, you can always go to www.we. Then it's the connecting line dash.
Actually hyphen, right? A minus is a hyphen, right, Jim?
Yeah, minus. Let's just say minus. Is it correct, Jim? Hyphen?
I'm not a technical wonderkind, but I know what you're saying. It's like a minus sign. So we dash.
Yes.
Sure. It's a dash.
We minus C minus U minus 2.com. So there you can find
the number 2, not TWO.
Exactly. Thank you. The number 2. So that will be our event, and hopefully during the show we'll get more into it and reveal some details too. But like I said, the website is not the most professional, but it covers basically everything you need to know. We're not going super into detail, and we also have to unravel the details. So it's an event, and we're hoping to have a lot of people coming and get together in a beautiful heart-centered energy to open up the field, that we will be present for the Yael to come in, or other species that want to be part of this. And my channel, personally, the entity I'm channeling, has always claimed, since I've been listening to my own channelings, that it would take around 15 people minimum to create a big enough energy bubble for us humans, for them to really interact with us in a positive, heart-fulfilling way, and a mutually rewarding way for us and for them. And so we're hoping to get to that number and see what happens. And so we're planning on Saturday night, on the 26th of September, to have a really nice contact meditation on a very secret, until now, location. We don't want to share it for various reasons, but it will be on a pretty high place in Germany, where you have 360-degree vision, and that's where it will take place, and will be hopefully the main event. And we already made a channeling about it. It's supposed to be the main event, also by the Yael coming through one of the channelers. But that will be surrounded by other channelings that myself am doing. And then there's Filipa from Portugal that will be part of this event, that's been channeling the Yael for quite some time now. And also gaining more and more follows every day, because she puts up weekly videos of the Yael. And then there will be another channel from Germany with the artist name of Gabriel. And it will be us three, like I said, accompanying this contact meditation, CE5 meditation, according to Stephen Greer, with channeling sessions. And hopefully, like I said, with visitors, a lot of visitors from all kinds of dimensions, but especially physical people from Germany, from wherever you want to come. And let's hope that we will have a good circumstances regarding all the political and health situation on the planet, and that we can achieve a nice number of like-minded people.
Well, as they say, what's to be will be. So I do hope your event goes off swimmingly. Sounds like a lot of fun. I am not sure what the international travel's like from America over to Europe, but I'm pretty sure within the EU, you guys can all kind of do whatever you want now, right?
Yeah, it was like this. It's what I heard, but apparently yesterday or 2 days ago, something came across my ear again that they're trying to lock it down again and have more restrictions again. But for sure, the last, I think, 2 months or something like this, if I'm wrong, correct me, the borders have been reopened and there's no controls, and then traffic can
protests like the
flow.
Berlin thing keep going on. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how the EU works in terms of freedom and people's impressions, but like in America, the idea, at least ideally, is like we the people make the laws and you guys enforce them. So if enough people protest, like I mean, usually that has a lot of efficacy and like kind of value, at least in our system. Not that many people do it often, but I would like to think that the show of kind of solidarity physically yesterday or the day before in Berlin would kind of get the message across that a lot of people aren't drinking the Kool-Aid on certain presuppositions in terms of this COVID crisis or pandemic, as they say. It's funny that you mentioned Stephen Greer, because I mean, there's a bunch of places I kind of want to go with this conversation, and maybe Raphael has some questions written down. But ironically, I should preface, Raphael is the reason I got into aliens largely. I mean, I grew up watching the X-Files and Independence Day and movies like that, but basically when Jupiter went into Sagittarius about 2 years ago now, I'm a double Gemini, and I made this kind of mental ascent to like, all right, I don't know if aliens are real, but I'm willing to like investigate them, at least like a Jungian archetype. Like if they're not full on physically real, maybe they're mental. Like Carl Jung was like, oh, spacecraft doesn't exist, but it's like real. Like it's not nuts and bolts, but whatever, it's real. And I was at least starting there, because for a while I just didn't bother myself with it. I was kind of just doing psychedelics and having fun without the whole alien thing. So I listened to a bunch of Starseed channelings, and that was cool. And then Raphael turned me on to Bashar, and I read The Prism of Lyra, this book by the lady that actually wrote the cards that we just introduced with the non-humanoid thing, or whatever Raphael read, 27 card, the Galactic Heritage deck, which is dope. I hope to get her on here sometime. But anyway, Raphael was kind of my link in that sense, kind of turning me on to the whole reality of it. And even more recently, I'm way more on this level, but it's not something I think, let's just put it this way, you're probably way more involved in that level of reality and maybe that community than I would be. Probably Raphael said more. But ironically, like this past week, my Nana, who's a hardcore Christian, like a right-wing kind of Christian lady, sent me a text. I sent it to Raphael. She sent me a text and was like, have you seen this documentary called Unacknowledged on Netflix? It's a Stephen Greer documentary. And I looked now, and she's like, check this out. And I checked it out, and it's like, I mean, if people want rather compelling evidence for more to the picture than meeting the eye kind of thing, this would be a good starting place. It's called Unacknowledged. So what was the C5 protocol that you're describing?
Yeah, well, I've been pretty familiar with it. I've done 2 CE5 contact meditations myself with friends in a closed circle. And to expand on that, it is about a 30-minute meditation that's also available on YouTube, I guess. I hope it's not illegal, but maybe somebody just put it up there, not knowing what he's really doing. But anyway, the meditation itself can be listened to, recorded. It doesn't need to be studied in that sense by one of the leaders or participants to actually physically say it. So it can be listened
So it's
to.
kind of like open source in a sense, right?
Yeah, I haven't really gotten into it. We will still do that if it needs to be purchased or if it's open source. But for sure, there is enough information out there to check that. And I myself didn't bring the material the first time, so it was a friend of mine, and we didn't talk about where he got it from or how. So still something that we're going through as a process. But anyway, the meditation takes about 30 minutes, and the idea is to send the location into the universe that we are. So you kind of try to be a drone without limits, and you zoom out from the place you are perfectly with your astral body and send the imagery of your city from the top of your state. Keep zooming out, send the pictures so that the ETs know where they have to get into, either with their consciousness or physically with their ships, and then you just send it with the intention of somebody responding to the call. That takes about 30 minutes, and then usually, if you're very lucky, something can happen right away, but usually it takes time for a response to happen. And it's interesting that we talk about Lisa, I think it's her name pronounced correctly, who also wrote the book of Lyra.
Correct,
Lyra. Yeah, and so she made a video that I recently watched of how contact can happen and unfold. So there's many ways. It can be a wind coming where there shouldn't be a wind. It can be a noise. It can be dust. The ETs are able to communicate in so many different ways. So her, for example, she was looking up to the stars, and then a guy from the contact meditation, or I don't know if they did a CE5, but they definitely did contact work. And then he took a picture of her. And then when he sent the picture, she found out that there was actually a being right next to her looking at her while she was looking up to see when they're coming. So the being was already there right next to her, and she didn't realize. Just on the picture later, she saw it and was amazed by it. So they love to play with us, and with our limited minds, we probably all look in the sky and wait for the first light to appear. But in reality, they have various different ways to create contact and play with us. And the Yael are very playful. So there can be situations before that happening or after a sighting in the sky that they try to get our attention and play a little bit with reality, maybe even for a group that would be very strong and already experienced. And me personally, I already talked about it a lot. I had my sightings of ships. I also recorded some. They're on YouTube. And so the Yael have already showed up for me in a big orange ball, getting bigger and smaller in size. So I kind of know what they are capable of doing. And we're hoping, with the help of Stephen Greer's Close Encounter number 5 meditation and protocol, we can achieve that. And for people who are non-believers, maybe create the first evidence. And for others that just want to have fun and be happy and greet them and maybe wave to create that experience. And yeah, hopefully we'll be successful with that. But it's also important, like a lot of people know that go into this type
Hold
of
on loosely kind of thing.
expectation-wise.
Wise.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's actually funny because what you were saying kind of reminded me of, I don't know if you've seen the film Interstellar, but like where the dad is talking through time, he's causing a watch to tick or dust to settle in a certain way. It reminded me a little like that, where it's like it might not be just like the traditional cliche of like War of the World, someone coming out of a flying saucer or something like that, but it might be something more akin to just paranormal phenomena in general, I have a couple questions just to get my mind. I mean, you're doing a really good job, you Capricorn. We've plugged the show. We'll keep plugging what you're going to do because I am interested in doing that. But and Raphael, obviously, jump in at any point if you've got questions. You're coming originally from Freiburg, France, right? Or is that Germany?
Germany.
Okay,
Close
I'm glad
to
I
France.
asked. I was like, Jesus, I'm such not a European. My bad. So yeah, Freiburg, Germany. Like I said, I had lived in Switzerland for a year or so I never went there, but I knew the kind of stomping grounds. Kind of tell me where you got into all this. Like, what was some of this, like, growing up, like, what were some of your interests? Maybe walk us through any experiences that led you towards an open mind. Because one of the things you just said is like, if people, their beliefs, like, what made your belief structure open to the stuff you're into at this point?
Well, apparently from the situation right now, I would say that it was a choice I made before incarnating into a human form, into a human vessel. But from a human standpoint of not forgetting everything and rediscovering ourselves, I didn't come across it for a long time, remembering from today. So when I was a kid, and I guess for a lot of humans, or most human, it's like that. We are very open. I think our pineal gland is completely open, so we can see lights, we can look through people, we can read energies. I think we perceive reality completely different or receive it than we do, let's say, when we first go to school or something and things materialize more and become denser. So I'm sure when I was a baby, I was already having my intergalactic friends and everybody around me playing with them. But I don't have conscious recall of that or memory right now. So the first thing I remember was when I was a kid, I was very upset. I was crying. I was calling for help from my parents, but they never appeared. And there was always somebody in my room. So we would say that this is the classical type of ghost experience or something that kids have when they can see somebody in the wardrobe or something and there's nobody there when you open it. So that was very strong for me. So I actually couldn't sleep with the lights off for a very long time, years and years and years. I always needed to have a light on at night. And I just had that memory maybe 6 years ago or something, or around that time. I mean, to make it more understandable, 2012 is when I started to be confronted with that in my life. If you would talk
Seems like
to
a big event, time period in general for a lot of people.
Yeah. So if you would talk to me of my version of 2011, you would have a completely different answer of everything that you will ask me than now. And I would even discredit myself. I would say that this guy is completely nuts and lost, and what kind of drug is he taking? So that I had this big shift in consciousness and kind of been reborn. And there's a suspicion that I had a walk-in would be the terms that could be used and could be found to research better. It's the idea that at one point in your life, another aspect of you just walks in your body and takes over. Or
we've had a walk-in on the podcast before, so we're kind of. I hadn't heard about it really much before then, but Maru Matu straight up basically died and then had this situation. So, but you're kind of describing it more as like an aspect of yourself. Do you look at it as like an element of your psychology, like your mind turning on in a new way, or do you feel like somebody else from another time space came in and inhabited your vessel?
Which would be me too, from another version of me, and I would say it's more like a heart thing, because there was one moment I can share that I was getting into philosophy. I listened to a lot of Alan Watts, and I had this time in my life where I was completely free, I would say, because I decided not to work. I decided to quit my passion, which was basketball, that I did for 19 years. And the relationship was over with my ex-girlfriend, and we lived together for 4 years in the same house. We rented together. So my son
Hard
left.
reset, it seems.
Yeah, and my son left Germany, and he was here for 7 years, and exactly that time he left. So there were 4 real heavy life changes all at once in a period of 3 months happening, or 4. So I was forced to reset, and I just took all my stuff and left the city I was in and went to Berlin. And then I just started a completely new chapter. And then one moment, and I remember the words that were used. So Alan Watts talks about that we are everything, and we are also the shopping cart, and we are like, we're one. We're the source, like in infinite fractals, but we are the one, and everything's made out of the one. So if everything's made out of the one, it means we are. Everything is us, and we are everything. This paradox. So, and then all of a sudden, my heart started opening like I've never experienced it before. And there was also a light in my room. And at that time, I thought, and until today, I don't know, that it was the sun coming in my window. But it got brighter and brighter and brighter. And I didn't take any drugs at that time or anything. So I was like, what is happening? This is too much. Like, please stop. And so when I affirmed that, the feeling went smaller again. And when I basically regained a normal state of being, or that was normal at the time, I started crying for 3 minutes, 5 minutes straight. I couldn't stop because it felt so good, and I felt something I never felt before. And that was the time it really, really started to change for me, things. And one time, I also, in that time, I ran out my door, and I had the landlord of not actually the landlord, but the person who rented the place to me, sub-rented it. So I went to her and I started hugging her, and I was like, do you know, like we're infinite beings. We're just incarnated in human form. This is so amazing. Like, wow. And I was so happy. And she was like, what is going on with this guy?
This Capricorn doesn't seem like a Capricorn anymore. It's beautiful though when people remember what they've forgotten. We've chosen to forget it in some weird way, but it's like polishing off a diamond, and all of a sudden you see like the facets glinting in the sun, and you're just like, wow, it's so, everything's awesome and deep and perfect, and I'm into Alan Watts, I get it. But I'm a dumbass, so I tend to forget what I remember. But that's why I've got Raphael. So
I could finish.
Oh yeah, my bad. I didn't cut you off.
No, it's all good. So, because you wanted to know like where this opening came from, right? With the ETs,
how did it get to where you are, basically?
Yes. So I was talking about how I was a kid and I had this visitation. So I got a friend of mine that also actually did the CE5 with us to do a kind of hypnosis work with me. And so I went back to that event, and then it was told to me that I was part of this, well, I just call it experiment for now, but I would term it differently actually, but maybe more people can relate, of the abduction idea. So they told me that I was also taken and I'm part of this movement, and then more memories came back, and I actually got visuals of the ship that took me. And so it was interesting because first I had a kind of, so what I believe is that they played a movie in my head when this happened, so that I don't have to experience it like full throttle of full-time effect, so to speak. So I think that they kind of accessed my brain, and then they showed me like some beings and who's my mom and my dad in a more spiritual sense. And when I came back, my friend was like, is that sufficient for you? Do you feel better now with what happened? And I was like, no. And then he was like, okay, let's go there again. And then I got the more physical view of it sent to me of what happened more physically. So there were apparently like 3 little beings coming in my room, taking my body and putting me on a ship that was like an organic ship. And then kind of my memory stopped also in the hypnosis state. So I don't know what happened there. I just know that I was back in my bed, waking up or coming back to this world. And that sounded good to me. And when he asked, are you okay now with the story and what happened, I was like, yes. And it felt good to me, and I didn't want to know more. And so I'm sure something happened there, first of all. And that's just something I recalled from later. Like I said, maybe 6 years ago or something like this too, around that time. And then, like I already said, I got into the alternative states of consciousness, the Alan Watts philosophy type of things, and accessed that. And then also I found out about Bashar and the Sasani and about channeling, and then I got interested in all the civilizations and the Arcturians and the Syrians and the Pleiadians and all these species, Orions, that we have, and started studying about them. And then I wanted to verify for my very German brain that everything is just matter, that things like channeling are real. So I started traveling the world and traveling to Brazil. And in Brazil, the culture is very, very open to channeling. So they channel religious figures, they channel dead people, like relatives, right? And it's very real. So that was amazing for me to see. So I encountered mediums that could tell me about my family, but I've never met them in my life, and I'm sure they didn't go on Google before and researched me. So very magical experiences I've made, and it completely verified the realness of channeling to me. So I gained more and more trust in the idea that Daryl, for example, is actually channeling an ET. And it became so real that at one point I didn't doubt it anymore. I didn't question it anymore. And then I also started to have my first sightings of UFOs, like clear sightings.
Isn't it funny how belief kind of like is the preface for it? You know, it's like if you're closed-minded, you might not experience it. Like, but once you start opening your mind and heart, more can occur. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's just not surprising, I guess. Like once one is willing to, take the leap of faith in some sense, like you'll be rewarded for that investment of certainty. I guess the issue is the illusion of certainty that humans want, and we want to be like not look stupid or not feel dumb or not feel incorrect or however you want to put that. And then once you start letting go of that, like I have to be right, and you kind of open up to the experience of whatever might come, things start happening.
Yeah, exactly. We were just talking about that, doing the German version of this type of also promotion for me, or the ability to talk more. And we repeated that too, that Western world is more with the idea that if somebody can be proven, then it's true. But so the belief comes after the validation or after the proof. So you have to be able to repeat an experiment basically forever, and it always needs to have the result, and then you can start believing that this thing actually works and exists. But in the more spiritual approach of things, it would be more the opposite, that you need to have to believe first before you can actually validate that belief. And for me, that was clearly true, like you just mentioned it, Jim. So yes, I agree completely. And it's always
This is where it
good.
gets tricky because it's
Yeah.
like permission slips. It's like some people might not have ever given themselves permission slips for certain things, so then maybe they can't experience it. Like we tend to presume a democratized experience of reality, and it's like, oh, if this exists, everybody can access it. It's like maybe not. Maybe some people just kind of block themselves off from certain realities. And so, like it sounds like you kind of were open to these things even as a kid. So maybe, Bashar, since you gave yourself a permission slip to be able to experience these levels of reality, that's where it kind of fucks with my head a little. Where it's just like, in a Christian sense, like the elect would be the idea, right? It's like maybe some people have elected to do this, and some people have elected not to do this, and then we're all trying to talk about the elephant, and some people just don't even see the elephant.
Yeah, that's a good way to see it for sure. Yeah, and so that was how I opened up more and more, and then the first sightings appeared. First, when I was under influence of magic mushroom or a little bit smoking or even alcohol back then, still in. And then there was always this opportunity for me to still deny it. So they never made it really clear. And one sighting I had, I will never forget, with the mushroom that I had taken. So I saw this big white light, about half of the size of the moon. So way bigger than any star you would find. And it just started moving above my head, and I was like, this can't be real. What is this? Okay, I'm on mushrooms. So it just kept going, and then I thought again, like, no, I'm still like pretty grounded. I know what's going on. I took some mushroom, but like I rubbed my eyes and I kept looking, and then it was interesting because the ball of light got smaller and smaller and smaller as my doubts got like higher and higher and higher, or my connection to the physical world started densifying again. And then it actually turns out that this light turned into an airplane. So I was like, okay, maybe I saw the lights of the airplane really bright because I'm on mushrooms. And then another part of me was like, no, there's no way, because an airplane just blinks and it doesn't have a steady light. And I was like, yeah, but maybe it's landing and they turn on the steady light. So I had this opportunity in my brain to play around and still make it a physical experience that is explainable from the mindset I had back then. But then I started to have sightings sober and more synchronicities and events that just have no more physical explanation at all.
Couldn't blame it on the mushroom at that point.
Yeah, couldn't blame it anymore. I mean, unless a mushroom like lasts for like years, which I've also read. I read already that this is possible, that a mushroom can still have effects a long time after taking it. So yeah, who knows? But for me, what's important is that it's true for me now, and that more and more evidence comes, and until the point where I also was like, okay, I've seen enough. I don't need any more proofs. And then they still kept coming, like it usually is. When you let things really go, they come even more. And then I had this opportunity to go to a channeling event with the Ayel in 2016, where Sean Swanson was present from Hawaii, from Maui, that I'm close friends with by now. I visited him last year in November on Maui. And he basically confirmed through the channeling that what I saw was actually ships from the Yael, and that there's the opportunity for me to also channel, that there's somebody waiting for me, and if I would like to create contact, and then he gave me a meditation that I did, and then it happened rather fast because I come across people who practice and study and read books for years and years and years before they even try channeling. But for me, it came really, really fast, kind of like a talent I had that I never knew existed. And yeah, that's basically in short summary the story of how I have this amazing gift or opportunity to do this on planet Earth, and with some events that just now came to my mind. I could talk for many hours about more events and more things that triggered me and helped me with this transition, but that were probably the most important ones for now, synchronistically. And yeah, so I hope that answered your question.
Oh yeah, totes. That's what's up. I lived in Hawaii for 2 years on Oahu and Waikiki and Honolulu, so I've been to Maui. Very magical place. I'm glad you've seen it. It's got its own energy for sure. And it's funny because I'm getting married. I have a fiance, and she turned me on to these psychics basically that they were like, oh, ask them questions, whatever. And I was like, all right, what are my starseed connections, this, that, and the other? And they were telling me all this starseed lineage stuff. And they even went as far as saying I have something like an aspect of myself like on a ship right now. And I'm still not sure how to process that. I'm like, it's not that I don't believe it, but I'm just like, I don't know how to process that. I'm like, what does that mean? So it sounds like you've been processing and integrating very well, not having too many expectations, simultaneously trying to not just be, a wild child about it. Like, it seems like you want to go through a methodical thing that actually convinces you and yourself to the degree that you feel comfortable with it, which I think is good. I mean, it's somewhere in the middle, that middle path thing. It's like, you don't want the porridge too hot, you don't want the porridge too cold, Goldilocks kind of middle zone. So when you started channeling, I mean, you said you have like a natural proclivity for it. Raphael, he himself channels. I'm kind of curious how you guys know each other. I wouldn't say that I channel, but I have a Mercury and Mars conjunct in 12th house Cancer. So basically, when I pull cards or play music or something, it feels like I step aside and I just think of it as flow in a sense. But it's not like a conscious like thing like Bashar. Like, that seems like something that like he doesn't know what the fuck's going on, and he's kind of like, oh, I'm back. When you channel on a scale, like, is it more like Daryl Anka, or is it more like Raphael, where Raphael is kind of aware of what's going on? When you're channeling, what is the kind of phenomenological experience for you on as the channel?
Yeah, I talked about this already too in other talks. So it's basically the idea of still being there, sitting in the backseat of a car, and the personality structure would be like the driving engine, right? The guy who's on the wheel, and that just steps away, and then somebody takes over the wheel, takes over the body, takes over the language, takes over the thoughts, and I'm just sitting there, and I can lay down in the back seat. I can kind of fall asleep, and then it would be more like a state that Daryl describes. So sometimes I watch my own channelings, and I'm amazed by the information that's coming through. I'm like, what? That's actually me saying this?
I said
like,
that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it can really happen. And I mean, I've been, I would say, on the other side. So I've drank a lot in my life and bottles of whiskey. So I would wake up the next morning and people would call me and be like, hey, you did this yesterday. And I was like, no way, I didn't do that. And then they would show me a picture or an audio or something. I was like, no way, no way that was me. So I'm pretty sure I channeled some darker entities.
I'm a recovered alcoholic. I totally feel that. Like, it's like blackouts, and it's like, yes. Oh my god, I didn't even think I was capable of doing these things.
Yes.
So I guess it's a better version of that. Are you I mean, not now, obviously, but was there a level of apprehension and fear when you started doing this, or were you just like okay with the idea of just from the get-go?
No, neither way. Neither when I got really drunk, nor now channeling. I somehow have this trust, this deep trust that everything will be fine, even if I like being stuck somewhere, or I don't know, like I just have so much faith in that my higher self guides me, or the universe, to exactly where I need to be all the time. And I've always been very good in living my life and kind of being very comfortable with myself. So I've experienced, let's say, really lonely times that I would just drive in Brazil, for example, to a house in the middle of nature and stay there 3 weeks by myself. So I have a really good relationship with myself to the point where I'm not afraid of not returning or doing some really, let's say, stupid stuff, for example, when I was drunk, because I always knew I had myself. So with this trust and this comfort, I just go in it and let everything be. And I never really cared a lot what people think about me anyway. So for me, it's clear that it's another entity after all, but some people already put comments on my YouTube channel like you need to stop using drugs, or like really, I would say, aggressive type of confrontation with what I'm doing towards me, and I never really took that to heart. Or so I've always had a pretty high self-esteem, I would say, which helps me a lot in the channeling state as well as back then when I was drinking a lot and having blackouts. So there was never any fear involved in the actual channeling state. So I had a lot of fears when I came out of the channeling state, and I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, or then I'm questioning, like, what are you doing? Like, this is really strange. In a moment, just reflecting in a bus ride, I don't know. And then
Yeah, that makes sense. Because as a Capricorn, I would think that in some way control is kind of an issue. Not an issue, but it's ruled by Saturn, which is karma, rules, control. So I just didn't know how to you if it felt like you're giving over yourself and you're hoping you get the keys back, or if that kind of stuff. Because when Raphael started showing me his channeling stuff, like I was just doing a lot of LSD like once a week and smoking weed and stuff, and I was waking up synchronicities, but I still had a lot of programming from religion to make me very apprehensive about what he was doing. Like I wasn't against it, but I was just like, what is he doing? Is this possession? Like what is this? And I guess in a sense it's possession, but like it doesn't seem, I don't know. I guess one's presuppositions can color it way more darkly than it maybe is. What are the only kind of people you're coming into contact with the Yael? Or are you getting a whole slew of people, or what's that like?
Sure, Simon is going to comment on that. However, we have a slight connectivity issue, so we're just going to play some music right now, I'd say.
Perfect.
And then come right back with him, yeah?
Sounds good.
We are back with Simon for Team Rabbit Hole Edition 135. Jim, kindly restate your last question.
I just want to say, Raphael, that's 2 for 2. Really dope tracks. As a guitarist, that was super inspiring and sexy and lit. I love that track. Simon.
Well, Libra is ruled by Venus. What should I tell you?
Yeah, no, you got it. You got the aesthetic kink of all, you're into aesthetics. Let's put it that way. So, yeah, Libra. Simon, I kind of was wondering, I don't know what you heard, if anything, you probably got kicked off before I asked, but it sounds fascinating, what you were saying, and I'm glad you're not, afraid of losing control as a Capricorn. That can kind of be a thing for them, ultimately, so it's good that you're in a position where you're kind of rolling with the punches on it. Are there other beings other than the Yael that you talk about? And I kind of want to get into who the Yael are, but I just want to get an idea of, like, are you talking of many things, or just mostly one vibe or tribe, or however you want to put that?
Yeah, I'm channeling so far for others. I'm just channeling the Yael, and the entity is called Marcus Samuel L.E. But in my head, I'm in contact with many races, many species. They've already introduced themselves with names. When I do ayahuasca sessions, I see them. I'm in contact with them. So I know who they are more and more as I go along. But publicly, I would only be known as a Yael channeler.
That's what's up. I have yet to do ayahuasca. I'm pretty sure Raphael's done it 4 times. I've smoked DMT and talked to like Egyptian deities and had a Kundalini awakening, all sorts of weird stuff. So I get the psychedelics are interesting and impactful when you're doing these things? Do you look at them as like opening up filters that are existent? I mean, as opposed to straight up hallucinations of non-quote existent things? Do you think you're just tuning your frequencies in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing of definition, right? The experience probably for somebody who labels it hallucinating is the same for somebody who says, oh, everything is omnipresent. So it's just a matter of defining it. For me, I think it would be the same thing. It doesn't really matter if I'm hallucinating or seeing it as a reality, because the outcome is the same, the experience is the same. It's very real. And I think using the hallucinating permission slip or definition just is a tool to stay more grounded, to maybe come back faster to the old belief patterns, or integrate it in a different way to be able to not drift off too far, and on the other hand, labeling it as a real experience that's present anyway is just moving the filters, the frequencies from one bandwidth to another, and perceiving a different reality at that time for a certain period. I think opens up for more of these kind of experiences, especially also in a more sober state. So it's again how we define it, how much we believe in it, opens up different timelines for us to go down, to have either more of this experience, or to limit it and call it something that's not really real, that's just in our heads. And both are equally valid, right? I would say.
Right. I think in some ways the ego, like what you're saying, the ego wants to try to make sense and contain and control reality to a point where it meets its own approval or something. And then that's maybe where it would lean more towards like, oh, this is a hallucination, where it's like trying to be like, this dream will pass and I don't know. Whereas somebody who might say, this is a frequency band, they've given themselves a little more looseness with the terms. They're maybe more curious by nature, even potentially. Unless like maybe working out of fear. It doesn't mean every experience, whether it's sober or not, isn't. I think people. Okay, so like sometimes people can get very afraid and like run back to their shell, but like things that are awesome can cause you to be like put in your place in a sense. Like if you go to a big waterfall, you're gonna have this respect for it, which I guess I would call awe. But you're not gonna be like cowering and like hiding behind a rock, saying, "Oh my gosh, the waterfall's gonna get me," or whatever.
Yeah, and I also remember that before I got cut off, you were talking about how you heard some of Raphael's channelings, and
I was coming from more of a place of fear, I'll be honest. Like I was just I don't know. I was trying to rationalize it.
Yeah, I was just saying that you already said that to you it was possession, and it is a possession. And I was sitting here in front of my computer, like nodding with my head, because it is a type of possession. Like you could see it that way, but it would be a positive possession in a way, right? When we get positive benefits from it in a channeling state. But classically, it still can be very well defined as possession of my old personality or my body or whatever. So I can agree with you there. And it's wonderful that you opened up and allowed yourself to look at it and try to stay neutral and work with your old beliefs of Christianity and religion, and to now be at a point you can like do this interview with me in a very I would say neutral way or respectful way or a very friendly way, a very heart opening way. That's very beautiful. So thank
it's
you
like the
for that.
X-Files. I want to believe. I'm just like, I've been programmed to think like Greys are going to take my kidneys or something. So I'm just been like, nah, I don't want to think about that.
Well, in this case, it's not the Greys you have to worry about. And I mean, by now, your own Nana is sending you undisclosed by Stephen Greer, so you know.
Isn't it funny how it all works?
Heard the alarm bell yet? Question mark. And just to clarify, as it is explained, and at least I would agree, Simon, of course, kindly give your perspective, that what actually happens is that, and how could it be different, right? Is that a fusion is created. Somehow I'm thinking of Dragon Ball now. And whereas you're actually combining your own, let's say, personality construct and let's say, I'm not sure if I get the terms right now, but let's say you're more like human earthbound level structure, which can also have higher aspects in a sense, and combine that with aspects of your so-called higher self or other parallel selves. Among those can be any type of beings, including, of course, Yael, Sasani, or any others, especially those closely related to us. And then you're actually creating a third reality and a third personality construct or energy amalgamation that's a combination of the two, and that is then what is being displayed. And at least to me individually, in terms of my phenomenological experience, I would very much agree with that view.
Yeah, that would be the view I would definitely give off to in a very positive, defined way, and that's also how it came through Marcus or through me as a channel, that this is exactly what's happening. So it's actually not him talking. It's also not me talking. It would be a third entity, the fusion
So
you talked
ideally,
about.
it's the best of both worlds, right?
Yes, exactly.
Interdimensional alchemy at this level.
Because like I already said, at one point, it was so clear to me that everything's one. The one is the all is the one. So there can't be any possession anymore because it can't be separated anymore, right? So I couldn't define it even positive as a possession anymore. But I understand from a more physical standpoint where everything's fragmented and separated, that from this lenses or from this point of view, of course, it's a type of possession. It has to be something external that's coming in. But looking at it from different viewpoints, it can also, like we just said, just be a fusion of energies that are actually one and the same thing.
I don't know what your presuppositions with like historical evolution are. Like, Raphael's probably more into alternative history or like yugas in a sense. I'm not against that, but I'm wondering how much of our, like when I did DMT and I'm seeing Egyptian deities and stuff, at one point I was like, is this my my pineal gland talking to my prefrontal cortex in an anthropomorphized way, which would be very materially reductionistic, I get, but like kind of odd like that. I'm wondering how much of our human anatomy and like our animal nature, if you want to put it that way, like this human kind of ness, struggles with even being able to articulate these things. Because for example, I'm not going to get religious on you, but like in the Bible, it talks about like people being the Lion of Judah or something. It's like that's taking on a personality attribute at a different level or a different frequency than would be like normal waking consciousness, and they would attribute it to like that anthropomorphization or whatever. So I'm wondering if we're just sliding the scale further and further, and just the circle's getting broader and broader. And I do like how it's funny because if all is the one is the all, it's not so much possession, it's just more like focus, really. It's like one part of you has more focus, sometimes consciously or unconsciously, and then at other times it seems you shift your focus.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be a very, very friendly way to put it. And like I said, also the way I would put it for my definition personally, just like Raphael just now has stated, and about the alternative paths or timelines of humans and the animalistic approach, and what would be more biblical or religious in a sense of that we are more alone and that we were created by a God and there's maybe some angels and that we are very how can I put this, like a species that is maybe not really worthy or needs to gain worthiness from a higher entity like God or Jesus, and Jesus comes here to sacrifice, and we are more animalistic, and we are scientifically in one way maybe coming from apes, or there has been other human forms like Neanderthal or something that like we just talked about it. I think it's a very valid way to look at us, and it's just as true as us being a DNA mix of ETs. And it's up to us to choose what we prefer, because I am now starting to understand more and more that the concept of the everlasting now, it is also a state that it's valid, right? So, and from there, we are actually creating past and future. So if I would start believing more in a religious, limited, without judging way or animalistic way, I would kind of have my future also go according to that. So if I would consider the fact that I'm a gene mix of ETs, or even a part of creator, a part of source as a fractal, I think I'm allowing myself to experience a whole bigger variety of future versions of me. And it's just like Bashar would say, a positive alignment, or something that makes us expand, that expands our abilities, our consciousness, our free will, our choice of who we want to be, of where we want to go, as if I would choose that I'm a linear being that's coming from an animal, and I would be very religious, then I would most probably attract reality after reality that would form something according to that core belief of me being separate, or me needing to earn something in order to be a whole being. So, like I said, I think it's more a belief system we can play with than needing to debate which one is more true, or which one has more validation or something. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I totally hear you. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's funny because I'm starting to. We had a episode the other day where somebody read a John C. Lilly quote. He was a guy who did a lot of LSD and dolphin research, basically. But he was saying something to the effect of like, I don't know if how you have it offhand, but something to the effect of like, your belief, you grow to a point, you hit a kind of a a limit, and then your job is to grow beyond that. And I think what an option we can do is hit that um I don't even know, like zone, like kind of like zones of atmosphere, but in terms of like soul growth and stuff, it's always one big thing, but like we kind of apprehend it through stages in the linear sense or whatever, through quote growth. And we have the option to like hit that limit and ricochet back in fear, or we can, kind of grow through it. And I'm at this point, I mean, it's just like, I don't know if there's like words kind of fail in a sense if we're like multi-dimensional beings and we're creating the past and the present from this point. Like it gets really hard to kind of explain that in a way that is digestible and cogent, but there's a kind of knowing that's like the Buddha smile or something. Like I kind of get what you're saying, but it's hard to put into words without sounding either crazy or whatever. So I hear you though, yeah. Um, so, okay, so tell me a little about the Yayo. Let's just pretend I know nothing. I've heard about them a little, but I just like for anybody who's never heard of them at all, give us kind of a 101.
Yeah, well, I'm still collecting information and putting my version of the Yael out there, and I'm very, very careful doing that. So, what I can take from my own channelings is that they are also still occupying human bodies. There's debates if they have 4 toes or 5 toes, but for sure everybody's pretty much on the same line about having 5 fingers or 4 fingers and a thumb. And they are usually described from my channel most definitely as more skinnier. So they kind of don't have the need to grow muscles like we would do as a bodybuilder or something. So they would be rather skinny. And since they have a different mixture or composer of blood, their skin color would differ from ours. It would be not as orange or skin color strong as we are, because we have red blood. So they can turn more like bleach, like with no color, and even into a little bit of bluish type of skin. But also take on our skin color, so that they can be a mix. I'm still trying to, like you said it too, make my own picture, but that's the description I got, so I'm sharing this. And this is interesting because of the idea of also ETs already visiting us, and the Anunnaki, because there's also the idea that they had blue blood, and there's also the idea of a royal bloodline that seems to be blue, which I came across, but I don't remember the details, and it could actually be a very possessive one, like a one that wants to dominate and keep power, this blue royal bloodline. But anyway, that's how I combined what I've learned and come across. So their skin tone can vary and can change, and their average of now it becomes difficult because in the United States they
You could just use meters. It's all good. I'll convert. You don't have to worry about it for me.
Yeah, so it would be like between, I hope I get it correctly, but 160 and 170, about that height. And so my personal channel would be a little bit above 170. He said, if I would to perceive him in my reality. So who knows how tall they would be to themselves or in comparison to other species. But if they are able to manifest here in our reality, they would be slightly shorter than the average human. And usually the females have hair, also long hair it can be, and the males would rather have short hair to no hair, or hair that we wouldn't really perceive, but when you would touch the head you would feel something, kind of this idea. They reproduce like we do through the physical act of sex, so we would say. Still, I heard that the Sasani already reproduce in a slightly different way, which is interesting. So they said in the last channeling in Vienna that they are also on the way to transform that a little bit farther. And yeah, they are.
So they have some hashtag goals. They're like, we want to fuck without fucking, I guess. That's what you're
Yes.
saying.
Yeah, I guess something like this. It was interesting because one girl, I think, was pretty open in the last channeling and the tour I did. So she had really detailed question. And I remember now that he loved this idea to talk about it. So he said that he actually only grows like a penis or an organ when it's time for it. So because they obviously don't use clothes like we do, for example. So they would just kind of hide it or something. It's interesting to imagine. Or when we like draw comic figures or for kids, it would be like something like this, right? Yeah. So that was very interesting for myself to listen to in retrospect, and something that I remember now actually. So to go really more into detail, and then I think the eye color of the Marcus is like greenish, but it can also vary, and they are made out of the same basically DNA than we are. I think it's a 12-string DNA that most people are aligning with, that we are made of. So 2 for sure are physical. It's the double helix that we explored, and then basically all humans agree on this. And then I think as we move up, they become more etherical. So not all of them will be visible, I think, in physical matter. So the Yael would also have the same DNA strengths and everything that we have. So the way I translate it usually is that if you go in a supermarket and you buy a set of Legos, then the set of Legos would be the same, but they are just put together in a slightly different way. And so they are very, very related to us. And also Bashar said, and others say that they would be one of the first species to come to actually be here physically or in a third type of reality, because they are so much like us. and they also have lips still. They can still use verbal language. They barely do it. And the way I understand that they're doing it more and more now to also prepare contact with us to be able to actually speak with us instead of doing it in a sense of telepathy, because that might be too freaky for us if we actually hear people talk in our heads all the time or something. And there was also this funny idea that when somebody asked this question in my head, that they would actually in the beginning move their lips and then they would just stop moving the lips, but the voice would continue. Like
It's a good way to edge you into. It's like I'm just miming what I'm saying, and now it stops. Now you got it. So, is there like a history? I know with the I think I was reading on your site that it said that they're descendants of humans. Is this kind of a similar thing to the Greys and humans in an alternate timeline with the Asasani and the Bashar thing, or how are you understanding their relationship to humans?
Yeah, so that's one of the ideas that they were actually created in a circumstance that we kind of lost it as humans. So we went into a very different path of creating reality. We were very mentally focused, technologically focused. We grew big heads. We destroyed our ecosystems. We started to move underground. The sun radiation was too big, and that's actually a human parallel version of us. And they turned eventually into the Greys and started to be incredibly mentally capable of things that we can't imagine. So
But they kind of hit a wall with reproduction, so they had to do a kind of time loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They could only start cloning at one point, and then they knew that at one point that they can't continue existing like this. So they actually went back in time or wherever and met us, our timeline. And that's the idea of the abductions. So they would take gene material of us and study us and study our emotions. And as time moved on, in the beginning, they were, according to many reports, very rude. So a lot of people got scared and have traumas because of what happened. And they took material, and out of this material and their material, they created 5 hybrid spaces. So the Yael would be the last of those. So the most related to our version, and the Sasani would be like 50-50. And then there's, I think, the Maze, which would be the Grace, the first one. And yeah, I don't know the names, all of them.
You're
right
cool.
now.
I'm showing my ignorance. So I'm just like, I've heard of this peripherally, but I'm not like up to snuff on it to the degree that I'm like I could speak well upon it. Raphael has mentioned it in many podcast episodes.
There's
So
the Shah Yael, I remember now, and then there's one more. Yeah.
So on your site, it was saying that they're living in harmony with their planet, and they're like, I mean, do they eat meat? Do they do psychedelics? I mean, how are they living? Do they have animals like we do, or how does that work?
Yes, that's come through a lot through my guide or my counterpart, is that they have animals. They also have animals on craft, which I found very interesting. And that was amazing because we already hosted a big event. So this is actually the sequel now, 2020, We See You 2. So the first event was called First Contact in Sight, and that was 2017. So on that event was my first channeling in front of a group. And then one participant. Well, not really. But,
good. I'm just curious. I mean, it's the first time on this big stage or whatever. That 2017 was when I was in Switzerland. Where were you hosting that? Still in Germany?
That was in Berlin. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a whole story to my first group channeling, and it's connected to bees. But maybe later we can get into it, because it's actually a longer story, but it's amazing because I had a really, really intense contact with a bee during an ayahuasca session, connecting with the Yael, with the intention. And I actually went to the jungle because of my doubts of being possessed, like you said, and I would have the shaman look at me in the channeling state, and he just verified that it was very beautiful, and he just saw like pure white energy moving through me and all this. I gained a lot of confidence there.
Well,
already.
Shit, that's a good report from the doc.
Yes, exactly. And then it happened that there was a bee actually laying dead where I was eating right before my first session. So I took the bee, and then I already knew that there are forces playing along. Like I said earlier, I had sightings, but then I had more and more experiences like this that connected amazingly through time, very individual things, like this bee story.
Feel free to tell the bee story. I don't know what else we would say. Feel free, the conch is yours. Bees are very powerful. I mean, obviously, people who might not know, we wouldn't have food production the same way. Animals and humans depend on bees, and they're beautiful.
Yeah, I think that the bee story is still continuing for me. So it's actually a message I'm not supposed to know everything yet, but I'm sure it will go into the ancestors of us and the Yael together, which I think it's insectoids type of beings. Could be mantis, could be something like this.
Well, I met a mantis on DMT. Yeah, that kind of freaked me out. I was like, oh my gosh,
I'm also going to say it's mantis for sure.
Yeah. And they were part of this experiment, so it makes a lot of sense. And maybe now it's supposed to come through. So anyway,
and just to mention briefly, because you mentioned the mantis, Francis, who had been at the alien.de conference last year and spoke about the so-called Ariel phenomenon, written with an E, Ariel, which hopefully they're going to release a documentary soon. He did a hypnosis session, like 20 years plus after. And he said that he may actually also now be remembering to see some, insect type or tall gray type entities as well, if I remember correctly. And while for me it's only been the slightest glimpse, and I haven't had like a, super clear, visual alien contact, or who knows? There are stories I could tell, of course, but the one glimpse I had I believe at least, on my very first ayahuasca journey, like the very first glimpse, I would have related to some kind of an alien entity and potentially like a mantid entity, but I really only saw it for like a second, and then, some stars, and then, the whole fractalization really started. But yeah, interesting to note for sure. And insect and the whole hive mind idea, I think, is a great topic unto itself. And all these different histories that have been relayed, if one can look at it from a neutral perspective, it's really highly, highly interesting.
Yes, I totally agree. And because we also talked about the common ancestors, maybe, or our relationship to the AL, so I'm sure a lot will reveal in the near future of who we come from, who's part of this DNA, this 12-string DNA. So I think we're uncovering that, and that's also why I'm not feeling too much to go into that right now. And it's a story that's really worth telling, I think, for more than 5 minutes, because to really get the idea what happened with me, because we did a daytime ceremony in the middle of the jungle in a very, very, very big tree, which is called Kumaru tree. And I had the intention to connect with Marcus, Samuel, Levi, and the Yael. And this whole 8 hours was connected to the Yael. And at one point, this bee just showed up, and it actually had 3 colors. So it was green, yellow, and blue. And it just landed on my arm. And it helped me to completely change my state of being and my mental state, because I had some wounds on my leg. So I was bothered by flies, and also this energy arrived that I would die because it's already infected, and I couldn't get the flies off. And then at one point I just surrendered. And then all the flies on my body started feeling like sweat. because I know the state of sweating really good through my basketball career. And then when I opened my eye, all the flies were gone and one bee was sitting on my forearm. And so we had like eye contact and had a really intense conversation and moment. And the bee was just beyond describing. It was so beautiful because it was multicolored. And so anyway, at the event, there showed up, it was actually two bees. So there was one bee. So we're sitting on tables that are connected, like benches, and then on there was one space free, and exactly on that space was a bee. And I was like, oh, I can't sit on the bee, but then I realized that it was dead or frozen, and then another bee was there. So I took both of them and laid them under my chair, and I hoped that when I come out of the channeling state, it would be gone, like come back to life. But unfortunately, it was still dead. But I experimented with giving life back to ants already successfully. So I hoped I could do that with the bee. But anyway, the initial question was about the nature connection from the IL. So when I was channeling there for the first time in front of audience of a group, then one participant had a papagayo, a parrot, I guess in English, this beautiful bird animal that can sing. It's a parrot, I guess. So this parrot started communicating, and the whole room started to be quiet, and the parrot would go crazy. And then Marcus would say that the parrot is now communicating with the beings on that were on ship with other birds from their planet. And that was a really amazing experience.
So animals can channel, is what you're saying.
Yes. So he said that they can see each other or feel each other and communicate with each other. And Sean channeled earlier through, so Aishoa was channeled through Sean, which is another deity or entity of the Yael. So he channeled that the ship is now actually overlaid with the hotel we were staying in. So it actually landed, but just in another frequency range. And then I channeled a day later or the same day, and then all of a sudden the animal, the parrot, started communicating. And so it all made sense, right? And it was very obvious at that moment of time that this was happening. So back to the original question, yes, they are very nature related. I have channeled that, for example, they would be able to sleep anywhere on their planet at any time, and the tree would actually start moving if it would rain or something like that. He didn't explain like this, and I don't know if it rains there or if they're actually affected by rain, if it gets cold or not. But the environment would kind of react to the place that they would sleep in. So it would start bending, like a tree would start bending or a bush, to make it comfortable for them, because they're in constant communication with nature and they know that everything's conscious and everything is a living being. So they are very, very, very connected with their planet, and I'm sure with other planets in the universe, and can communicate directly with nature, not just with animals, but also with plants. And they also, they don't eat really anymore, like especially animals, but also plants. They would more like drink a tea or maybe make a smoothie or something, but they wouldn't eat processed food anymore at this time. So that also to me shows a very deep connection to nature, and that they would be able to just meditate with a plant and receive information. And one time he explained to me how he goes to sleep. So he doesn't lose consciousness. He doesn't have this kind of black nothingness state that we would all have a sensation of. So he would start traveling with the noises of nature, or the tree he's laying on, or they also have houses, so they don't just sleep in nature, or house type of structures. But so he would just, in our case, like maybe listen to an animal at night and would connect the consciousness, and then would kind of travel with this animal and enter the dream world, and then come back into his body when the dream is over. And so, yes, they are very, very connected with nature on their planet, and they don't have cities like we do, or cars, or airplanes, or anything that would, in our perspective, to disrupt nature or abuse nature or
So
exploit
they're very
nature.
symbiotic with the environment. it sounds like.
Yes, yes.
So
So
if they're
they-
not living in cities, like what's the living situation like? They have a limit, like 20 people per treehouse, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
well, first of all, I was asked the question about their population during my first channeling. So he said that it's less than 1 million, but several 100,000. And then later I started to read the book of Sean from Aishwa, and then he said the same thing. So I was like, okay, wow. So that actually makes sense, and there's already information out there. So by now, maybe they have surpassed that amount, but they are rather a small civilization compared to us, and so there's no. It's not even possible. Even if they would all start moving into one location on their planet, they could only have a city of like 1 million Yayels.
Right, it wouldn't be too overcrowded. So they're not working with scarcity. It doesn't sound like mindset. They're more of an abundance situation.
Of a what?
Abundance. I mean, it seems like they're
Yes.
in symbiosis, and they're kind of just like, I have my needs met, and I'm being kind to the world around me, so therefore it's going to be kind to me when I need,
Yes.
a hammock. The vines make a hammock or whatever.
Yes. So apparently, the way I understand is that they have played with the concept of abundance or no lack for so many generations that by now, actually, to change that state of being, it would take a lot of incarnations, or a lot of passing on to generations, even the concept of lack, before they will actually be able to experience lack in their world. So they have integrated it to such a big extent that they can't even start to think what lack could even be. So yes, abundance is omnipresent, and this is not going to change anytime soon. From
Do they
the way
have
I
games
understand.
like basketball?
They have games, so they have something similar to hide and seek, is what I experienced. What must be very funny, considering the fact that you are telepathically connected. So in order to turn off all this connection and pretend like you can't find me, you don't know where I am, because they kind of have a constant GPS, right? It must be a very fun game, I imagine. And so it's more childlike games, because what I know is that they also don't have a concept of competition. So
Interesting.
there couldn't be games like basketball where you count points and take them serious. It would be impossible. And this is interesting too, because I read in an article, or somebody told me, because I'm now two times traveled into the Amazon to visit indigenous people that have only been in contact for 30, 40, 50 years. So I heard a story somewhere along that journey that there was and how are the people called that explore civilization?
An
Anthropologists?
anthropologist? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's coming from one of the anthropologists that went to a tribe, and he taught them, I think it was cricket. So he was probably from England or something, I would imagine. So he tried to teach the indigenous people how to play it and how to keep score. So this already took a lot of time. And then the phenomena was that for more than 1 year, when they played cricket or the sport, I think it was cricket, but I wouldn't lay my hand in fire. So anyway, they played a sport to keep score. And for 1 year or longer, the score would always be equal. So it would be like 3-3 or 5-5, and then the game is finished. And it took them more than 1 year to have the score like 4-3, for example, or one team having more than the other. So when I heard that story, I also understood that for many races in the universe, they don't have a sense of competition at all. Like they just don't understand it. If even our indigenous species didn't understand that concept at first.
And it's funny because I think our presupposition of competition in like a Darwinian sense can create a reality in which that dog eat dog happens. Daft Punk has an album, the most recent album called Random Access Memories, and there was a song on it called Beyond. And one of the lines is, "There's no such thing as competition. To find a win, we lose control," all this kind of stuff. But yeah, like I think if we get out of a place of competition in a certain sense, it gets very kind of differently modeled. And I just want to say that was a very German saying, "Put my hand in the fire." I was like, that's hilarious. I've never heard that, but I know exactly what you mean. You're like, I wouldn't, put my life on it or whatever, like that. But that was very German or whatever to me. So that was funny. I kind of laughed internally. I was like, what? Put your hand in the fire. All good. Raphael, you've been kind of quiet. Do you have any questions you got for him at all? Just out of curiosity.
Number one, Jim, maybe try reconnecting because you're a little bit garbled. And yeah, we did a show in German already, talking about the Jael und Freunde tour. So anyone interested in that can just check out on the Okitalk archive or on the library channel, Jael und Freunde tour, Simon Gerve. We did an interview about a week ago, and therefore we already had our discussion, let's say. So I have, let's say, nothing too particular. Maybe the one thing where I'm not sure how much it came across, because it also very, very much relates to the current crossroads. I noticed you were talking about a little bit the grays and the abductions and things, Simon, but I'm not sure, or I didn't catch it, to what extent you laid out the idea that also the Yael actually are a mix of present and future humans, and about, let's say, the timeline choices and information that is brought back and that is exemplified by the hybridization process, if you want to go into that.
Yeah, well, if you have an intention with that question, I couldn't sense it. But what I can say is that Sean actually channels a version with Aishua of the Yael that is not related to the gray hybridization program. So there actually was a physical hardship on our tour in 2000, and not the tour, the event in 2017 between Wieteke Koloff, which is channeling Arjun very successfully. So she almost insisted that this can't be, right? So the grays are a creation of the hybridization program. So they can't not come from any other timeline. And Aishua, which is channeled, is saying no. There used to be a reality where humans, as we know them, and Yael already lived together, and we drifted off from this planet, from this place, in different directions to explore different ideas of reality. And now we're coming back together. And the way I put that in my head, in my physical brain together, from my understanding, is that what Aishua is actually saying, that we were like all Lyrans, maybe like feline people all together, and then split off in different versions in the physical world, in the physical dimensions, and are now coming back together. because I also cannot wrap that around my head yet, that the Yayala actually already present in that sense with us in a past timeline, linear way of seeing things. Because
in a sense, just briefly, if we say that they are created in the quote unquote future, what I was actually getting at was the whole idea of, let's say the maybe eventually suboptimal choices that the Greys made in terms of not being able to reproduce, and the information that may give us now. That's what I was getting at. Like maybe, for example, maybe only if we want to not to disconnect ourselves completely from our emotions and stuff like that, like the Greys did, which is why then they kind of had to come back to create the hybrid races to perpetuate their species. However, thinking about the idea everything is here and now, then just like now, for example, Bashar could contact us from quote unquote about 300 years in the future, or 300 to 700 years, whatever. In the same way, I could imagine that any race created at any point on a given timeline, once reaching a certain level of awareness and reading the signal of another civilization anywhere in space and time that is on a matching frequency, then of course they could interact, even if they were only quote unquote to be born millions of years later, if you can see what I'm saying.
Yes, for sure. And obviously, that is the idea I would also get into. And I just wanted to expand a little bit more with the great timeline and what can happen to us, and that it's actually very relevant to our human life here, no matter if we deeply believe in this idea or not, which for some is just a story, and for some I just call it is completely nonsense. But what is not nonsense is that technology has incredibly picked up in the last 10 years, in the last 20 years exponentially, and we have no idea. There cannot be one human who can tell me that he knows in 10 years what we will have on this planet, especially from a technological standpoint. And so I think we have to be very cautious and careful and thinking a lot how much we want to integrate technology in our lives. And there's no long-term studies about radiation from cell phones, and Einstein already, which can be used as somebody to give a lot of credit to or not. But if we do, he said already, when the interaction with technology surpasses the human interaction, we are in big trouble, or he even says we are done. There's a famous quote like this. I can't state it exactly right now, but it goes in that direction. So there are very fearful scenarios regarding technology, especially when we really start disconnecting from human interaction and from emotions. And so I believe that there can also be very, very positive technologies. Even Bashar's civilization uses artificial intelligence to a high extent, I would say. They have 3 spheres circling their planet, which are artificial intelligence that help to stable the energy fields. So I don't think we need to be scared from technology as an overall idea, but like everything, it needs to be channeled through the heart. It needs to be channeled through an integrative, not fearful way, because I think it's coming anyway. And I think the Mayans even predicted the age of technology way a long time ago. So I think that's also part, if we want, of the age of Aquarius, and probably Jim, you know more about that than me. But so I think that it is a very sensitive topic. And for me, definitely, I learned a lot from the Greys in my dreams, in dream time. I learned a lot from Bashar, from the Sasani, and I'm very careful how much I use my cell phone, how much time I spend on the computer, and how much of my energy I'm giving to the world of technology, and that's why I'm also taking nature substances or medicines like ayahuasca or hape, or go into the jungle for 3 weeks without any contact, to just have that earth grounding in my system, in my body. And I hug trees, and I try to drink pure water from rivers, and to move into a matching timeline with the Yael and other civilizations that have a deep connection with nature, and away from everything being technological, or having like printers that print food, or crazy things like this for me. So yes, for sure, this is a very present topic as we speak right now for all of humanity, and the grace can teach us a lot.
And as you mentioned, the environment, or I would actually say this is equal to the idea of nature itself. Francis, whom I mentioned before, who had experienced basically a UFO landing in 1994 in a primary school or something in Nigeria, I believe. And he says that what he gathered, apparently what the message was for many, especially the children who were there, was something along the lines of take care of your environment. Of course, this could now be understood immediately in a projective, particular fashion. But overall, I would just say it relates to the idea of recognizing that you are your environment, you are the reality you believe yourself to be existing in. And therefore, take care of yourself, take care of your greater self. And at least according to what I understood, most of these interactions were with gray type beings. And from that point, apparently even the grays, start talking about, take care of nature and so on, connect to nature. That's quite interesting. Maybe that was some kind of a, also already reformed gray faction that had been speaking to them.
Yeah, that's actually very present in my, I would say, day-to-day human encounters that I have, and friends I have from the time that I was not connected to this at all, that would share dreams like this with me. Like, oh, I met a being that showed me on a television that the whole world is full of cities and everything's gray, and then nobody can breathe air anymore. And just later, I started opening up for ETs, and then I was like, wow, another one of those examples of synchronicities, or things that just come together so perfectly later on that I'm like, this is incredible how it all fits. So this is something that I already knew before my time of channeling, that friends of mine had dreams with beings, or just dreams of the world being terribly destroyed, and things like this.
Yes, it certainly fits the theme. Well, Jim, what do you think about that now that you heard another one talking about these things as if they were an absolute reality? If he's available. Oh, actually, he reconnected, which is why he's muted. Here you go, Jim.
Word. Okay, I was wondering, I was saying things and you were not acting as though you heard me, and I had no clue that I was muted. No, I was never against them in a sense that I'm afraid of this stuff. It was just coming from more of a conservative, like I'm a double Gemini, so it's like I want to see the logic and make sense of things, but at some point an epiphany I had while I was in Switzerland, ironically, I had an epistemological kind of meltdown, and I was like, I can't trust culture because nobody has all their shit together. I can't trust my body fully because if you have a fever, that's not quite the same thing as being quote sober, or if you're on ayahuasca, like, you know what I mean? Like I was just like, there is no certainty. I kind of have just to take things as they come and come from the heart. That's the best really you can do. So I'm actually very open. I mean, I'm reading these. I got a Galactic Heritage card deck, right? I'm watching documentaries. I'm at a point where I might even try that meditation, this C5 thing. I don't know what I would expect. I guess one or two things, and then we can kind of wind down. When you're going to be doing this, I know you said you don't want to have expectations, but it sounded like at the last one they were kind of on the top of the hotel in another dimension or something. Do you, in your mind, do you want to have anything particular occur? Not saying that you're expecting it, but like, are you going in with a blank slate, or are you kind of like, oh, I hope they light a birthday cake for me, or like, what are your thoughts in terms of like a manifestation, particularly?
Simon, that goes to you. However, appears there is another kind of connection issue, so I'm just disconnecting him. And I'm sure
Doing
he's
our
gonna
magic.
reply.
The technology is already fighting us in the present.
Oh well. It's all
And it's weird because I'm not against technology, but Daft Punk is a good example where they're like the whole moment. I mean, they used to be just like Frenchmen who were DJs or whatever, and then in '99 they had the Discovery album drop where they're like, we were in the studio, there was a huge accident, and we melded with our machines, and now we're the robots, and they go by that identity. So it's like we're definitely at a transhumanistic time, a time when like what the definitions of what being human is are changing. So I don't have a lot of fear, but I know we're at a weird crossroads kind of with AI technology. Cell phones are just a few steps away from insertions into your flesh. Like we spent so much time on computers and cell phones. Now people in the 1900s would have been like, what are you doing? Like, you're not even living life. And who knows where we'll be in 50 years. So it's a tricky time. I don't know if he's going to reconnect or not. But I guess we could kind of plug his thing one more time. I appreciated having him on. I'd like to, I think it's hard to explain, but it's like the more one pollinates, like a bee, ironically, the one more pollinates in these domains, I think the more it causes residue in one's own reality. So I'll start probably having synchronicities. I'm open to it. It's just not been a pressing thing in my reality. It was more usually coming from religious kind of perspectives. And I've kind of not fully shed that, but that's transformed so much so that, I mean, I'm at a point where it's like, yeah, galactic brothers and sisters, where you at?
Yeah, and I mean, didn't even the Pope talking about, I mean, okay, in your case, I guess the Pope is a bad argument because that
I'm
only
not
belongs
Catholic. I
to
was like, I could care
Catholics.
less what he says.
What I'm just saying that even he, I mean, there's other agendas
Oh yeah,
potentially
there
and
was
strange
officially
motives,
like,
but he was
there's
like talking
aliens.
about, oh, we have to baptize aliens now or something like this. So yeah.
Space Force. I mean, we're getting the language out there in such a way that we're priming ourselves for the psyche of the collective, whether it's ready or not, to dip into new domains. And then there's people that believe. There's people that want to believe. There's people that don't want to believe, right? So I think we're trying to kind of figure out those timelines. I want to believe. Like, worst case scenario, I don't know. It's like I don't know. I never make contact with anything, but my fiance is an RH negative, for fuck's sake. So I think you are too. So it's like, seems to be coming up a lot in my reality. I'm open to it to the degree that I'm not having any expectations. That's kind of what I was wondering about Simon. Oh, cool, he's back. If you had any expectations, Simon, kind of wrapping up, let's talk about your event. And I kind of wanted to know if there was anything like, a main theme that Marcus is telling you, but it sounded like you had, as evidence in what you had said earlier, like a ship land and another kind of frequency on the hotel you guys were doing. Not to say you're expecting anything like that, but is there anything that you were hoping for? It sounded like you want straight up contact, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm hoping for myself, but I wouldn't project that into others. And I think it's also a simple topic because during ayahuasca, especially, I've seen what alternative states can do to people, and so I think it's a topic to be very careful about. But what I can also share about the 2017 event was so amazing because Sean was looking out the window at one point and he was like, look, the ETs are already here. And then I was like, well, what is he talking about? And then I looked out the window and there was actually a band in the hotel checked in at the same time, and they had a human sized alien ET puppet. And they were playing with it. And I've never seen anybody recreate an ET puppet that detailed, and it was wearing a T-shirt of their band. And I never found out what band that was, and I don't even know if they were from Earth. It was very, 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 very strange people, and then we met them really short in the hallway, but communication was really difficult. Maybe they just came from playing somewhere and were still buzzed by all the hype, but That was very, very mysterious too, and the ET.
Synchronistic.
Yes, very, very crazy. So things like this, basically, to be played with in a positive way, however they want to do it. That's what I'm hoping for, and what I'm wishing really deeply to happen. And if that just be our attention being directed to a place where all of a sudden there is shooting stars happening and we're just amazed, or the heat picking up at night and it should be colder but it's not, and we all have a good time, or ideas that come, or somebody making a joke and everybody's laughing, and basically to really have a good time. Because I realized when we connect through our hearts with other humans, and we really start being in the moment, and have this sensation that we are right now in the right time at the right place, and we wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And when this feeling arrives, and we really truly from our hearts have no expectations, and we are completely satisfied by the most simple things, that's when they show up very easily and very rapidly. So if we can just create a good connection with everybody that's there, and we're having fun, that also means that they are already there or close. And that's my true intention, and what I'm really hoping for is that we just can come together as a group and enjoy, because I realize there's no actual difference in myself when I'm connected with Earth, with humans, with fun, with joy, and seeing a spaceship. It's the same thing by now. It's not more exciting. It's not that sensational anymore. I remember when I had my first sighting kind of sober, and I ran to get my camera, and I recorded it, and I couldn't sleep it was already dark at night for 3 hours because I was so excited. So that excitement kind of came down now, because that was in 2016. And by now I really truly don't care if they show up or don't, as long as we're having a great time, because I'm by now so certain that they will at one point anyway, let's say in 3 years or in 10 or in 15. And I have no pressure to make that happen earlier or later or whatever. So the moment it will happen, and that already brings all satisfaction I could ever wish for. So there are no secret expectations of a ship coming and landing, or them actually physically manifesting. I also think it's too early for that to happen, because I think energetically it's just too much to handle to stand in front of an ET right now. I think it needs more humans. It needs more of the collective human consciousness to be already tuned into it way more than we are today. It needs to be more of a collective event. And so I'm not expecting anything outworldly to be happening in September. It's the weekend, 26th, 27th of September, 25th. We're already starting on Friday. So whatever happens will happen. And
Well, that's a good attitude.
Yeah. And
I think that's the conditions for magic. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, and like you're saying, it's very much when you come with your heart and you're in a mode where everything's awesome already. Like then it's just icing on the cake, as they say.
Exactly, and it really feels like icing on the cake. It's not like, oh, let's fake ourselves into pretending we're having fun, and then the cake is only created. But it's really, like I said, I'm sure that people who've never seen it, they will jump. Maybe some will get loud and scream, as maybe some will jump out of the chair. But at the same time, we already all of us know that feeling when maybe your soccer team wins, we're rooting for like very human basic things. We're jumping out of a chair. You're not gonna start flying all of a sudden or things like that. So it's just gonna be one of those events that make people really happy. But so many things can trigger us into truly being happy. It doesn't need to be a spaceship or a Yael. So I just hope we can create that happiness either way.
Sounds like a date. I mean, it's kind of like you're just excited to go on a date. You don't care if you get laid or not. If you get kissed, cool. Let's just go on a date and have a good meal and a conversation. It's like that. It's like you're just going to create the environment. And if things happen, they were meant to. And if they don't happen, still a good date. Raphael, I'm going to ask one more question, but I'm going to put in the messages a different song than I sent you before because I think it might make more sense. Because what you're saying right now reminds me a lot of Daft Punk. They had an album called Discovery. And it sounds like One More Time, kind of where it's just like shows everybody in the crowd kind of just having a good time. And the band is an alien band. When you were saying the alien band, that kind of made me think of that. But I guess my last maybe question, and then we'll let you go to sleep. I know you're kind of tired there on the coast in Germany at the moment. What would be Marcus's like if you kind of had to boil it down into one thing? Has he ever just said like, "This is my message. I want you to get across"? Mostly. Is there like one specific thing that he's like, make sure you get this out? Or, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like kind of like not a mantra, but something to that effect, like a pamphlet of idea or whatever?
Yes, I actually do. And it's actually interesting that you asked this question now at the end, because he has been communicating this to me actually since I started talking with Raphael. That was a great reminder. And I have my phases, right? So I would completely turn myself down and so to speak, unreachable for the ETs. So I would just travel for 6 months and not channel. And then I will reconnect. So Raphael, with his interview, kind of gave the jump start, and the communication has picked up since then. And what's been coming through a lot in these last days is one of Marcus. He created his own set of kind of rules or advices to live life by. And the first thing he says is everything's possible. And yes, it's nothing breathtaking now, but to really understand from a core concept that everything is possible, I think is something everybody can take to heart and work on, because in our human experience, we are limited on a daily basis to live life kind of holding back, to save up for something, and to integrate a lot of doubts and no, it's not possible, and only, I don't know, lucky people can live a beautiful life, or only lucky people can live in the destination I want to be in, or only lucky people can drive this car. I don't know, there's billions of examples, right? So he stresses so much, especially these last days, that everything really truly in its core is possible. And we have limited ourselves so much that little things that we start manifesting seems miraculous or like a wonder for us. But that's actually the regular state of the universe is magic all the time. Every second is magic. And the most simple way to put this is our existence, right? So it's just pure magic that we exist in every moment, that we take breath, that everything, that because when you understand that you are the creator of your reality, then you are creating the table you are in front, you are creating the air, you are creating clouds, you are creating earth, you are creating the universe. It's really you. It's not God or something outside of you. It's you are really truly the creator. So you are that possibility already making it happen. And so everything really truly is possible because you are already creating everything there is as a fractal of God, of the universe. So yeah, that would be the message. Everything is truly possible.
I think Alan Watts would concur. So it's funny, I'll say this, and then we can mention again where your event is and kind of how to get into to that. We'll put the website in the comments, links and stuff like that, so people can see it for themselves when they click that. When I was in high school, I played guitar. That's why I thought that song Raphael picked was so dope, because it had some sick jazz guitar. But I played guitar and back in high
Just
school.
by the way, the
What's
name
up?
of that track, this is a track by an artist called 0dB featuring Voice, and the track title is literally Anything's Possible.
Well, syncs abound.
Nice.
And that's what I'm going to comment on. So when I was in high school, I had this guitar pedal, like effects pedals, right? And I had this little thing I made to make it portable for gigs or jamming at friends' houses or whatever I was doing. And with like lettering for mailboxes, like, like they could say like the Smiths 910210 or whatever, on the mailbox. I took it and I wrote the word possibility, because that to me is the secret. It's like anything, like you're saying, anything is possible. We just have to allow our heart and our mind to rest into that. And then whatever, happens is a possibility we've given ourselves permission to experience. I guess that's kind of the dance there. But and it's funny, I think, Rafa, you got that link in the messages for the last track instead of the original one. It's called One More Time. So you're doing this event. It's the round 2. And the first one was 2017 in Berlin. Tell us again some of the details, and then we'll, say our parting thoughts, I guess.
Yes, for sure. So, like I said, and you just mentioned, this is the sequel. This is the second part of creating contact with Yael in a group channeling event. So it's more than one channeler, and we were very lucky and successful with the first event, having 4 Yael channelers of the same civilization all together in one place, a 3-day event. So we were able to repeat that almost this year. So we only have 3 channelers, but it's also 3 days. And all from the same civilization, which is the Yael, which we talked a lot now about. And I can also mention again Sean's book, Sean Swanson, the Phoenix Lights, the pilots of the avatars of the Phoenix Lights. That's what the book title is. Lots of information about the Yael in that book, detailed information too. And this event is called, in 2020, it's called We See You Too. And the website, like Jim just said, will be linked, but I'm also going to spell it out one more time. Is WE-SEE-YOU-2.com. We put together a little website. Every information is there, how much it costs, where you will be staying, everything's included. Food and drinks. It's a very beautiful location in nature. You will get an introduction of the channelers. So that would be me, myself, Simon channeling Marcus. Then there's Philippa channeling Hayla. And then there's Gabrielle channeling Lumika. So 3 entities of the Yael will be channeled. There will be opportunities for question and answer. There will also be information coming through, I'm sure, about the current situation, what we can do to intensify contact, what we can do to live a more fulfilled life, to be connected with our hearts, to integrate the inner child, to find joy in our lives in any moments. And it's a 3-day event. We're starting on the 25th of September. The event will be open at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so 16 o'clock for Germans or European time counting. And the first session will be at 8 for people 8 p.m., 20 o'clock at night, for people who might still have to work and travel a longer distance. And then on the 26th is the whole day. So all of us will channel individually, the 3 channels, and then at 4:30 p.m. we will head out into the field in a very nice location on a mountaintop with a 360-degree view. Hopefully we'll have no clouds, but I'm not promising anything. But ETs and consciousness and that type of area can also make that happen. There's amazing stories of weather changes and things occurring when things like this happen. So don't be surprised if it does. And then on the 27th, the Sunday of September, we'll have breakfast and then one more channeling at 10 o'clock, kind of it will probably be a group channeling. We'll probably all enter the channeling state together, all three of us. I've tried it already with Gabrielle, just us two, and it worked phenomenally good. It's only available in German, the channeling, but we did it in the Yael and Friends tour last year. And then the event is going to end at 1 o'clock on that Sunday. And I'm sure some people will stick around. And I've been part of events like this, and maybe more beautiful than making contact is the fact that we will be in a kind of family environment, because we don't need to debate if ETs are real or not, and everybody brings a lot of energy to this event, and it's kind of like seeing old friends from other incarnations, and the energy usually is very, very beautiful, very heartwarming, and finally people who, who understand each other and get together to create something very beautiful. So I can really only recommend coming through and being in an environment where you can really talk about everything and anything you want, and there's so much ears and open-hearted spirits to make you feel very, very welcome and comfortable. And that pretty much sums it up. I think it's in Rheinland-Pfalz, the state it's called. In Germany, it's Rheinland-Pfalz. It's also an area that's known for beautiful nature, little mountains, little hills. And that's where it's going to take place. It's Elmstein is called the place. So that would be Elmstein, Elmstein. And the closest city would be Kaiserslautern, or bigger place. I don't know the population, but it's pretty known if you want to know where to locate that at. Do you guys think I missed anything? Or
No, I think you spoke very good English for the record. I can't speak any German, so good on you. And yeah, I guess in parting, I hope you guys have a blast. I really do hope, like you're saying, it's about the band getting back together kind of thing. So whatever happens, you're gonna have fun. That's all I could predict. So I think you'll have a good time, and I think you guys, I hope you have as much of a good time as you're hoping you have, because I think it's gonna happen. Does that make sense? So redundant, I know, but it's nice hearing people pursuing their passions and pursuing community together. That's what Team Rabbit Hole is all about. Find the others in a very, now galactic way, right? So good on you. Yeah, everybody just try to find the others, and you'll find people of like mind, like resonance, and the magic is amazing when that happens.
yes,
Well,
I agree. Yeah.
thank you, Jim. Thank you, Simon. Anything you want to say at the very end, Simon?
Yes, of course. Thank you too, guys. It's been amazing. Jim, I know you now from, I think it's the third time actually. And your speed is amazing. The way you process things, the way you ask questions, the way you put things together. I've never come across somebody like you. So it really triggers me too into going deeper with my thoughts of connecting things, and especially from a speed type of view or standpoint. I'm learning a lot through your questions, through the way you interview, especially in a foreign language. So thank you a lot for the effort you put in this last 2 hours, or 2 hours 20. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. And of course, Raphael, thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak to everybody that's listening, and of course to all the listeners and people who tuned in or tune in later. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with us here and have an open ear and listening and putting your thoughts into the field and maybe also emotions, and to just be there with us. Thank you.
That's what's up. If I'm ever in your neck of the woods, we'll kick it. We'll try to get some aliens hanging out with us or something. Thanks again, Raphael, for bringing them on. It was a pleasure, and good luck to you on your search for more.
Thank you both for participating. Thank you all for listening. I wish you the highest excitement in your upcoming contact experience. And I would just say, expect to be surprised. Everybody go check out We See You Too and Yael events, Simon Gerve's websites. Yeah, enjoy yourselves and Shivai.
Celebrate and dance so free. Radio Okitalk, Radio Okitalk, von Mensch zu Mensch.